Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Chris Riker. He is an author and a journalist. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thank you, Jay. Good to see you.
Same here, same here. You are welcome to the show, Chris. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we'll be talking about. We'll talk
Hello,
about
people.
books. Wonderful. Books, writing, and stories. And this is so much needed in today's time. So, Chris, my first question to you is you have seen all sides of this whole thing. You have been a broadcast journalist. You are doing a lot of writing, and you know also about the books. You have got certain novels, so you all know all different forms of writing. Help us understand, how do you see all these three different aspects at the moment? Has it changed much from the time earlier on than when you were fully engaged in active journalism, or and what do you see now? Do you think people know it better? Do you think they are now communicating with their audience better, or there is a lot to learn, much more than earlier times?
Wow, there's a lot of parts to that question. There's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to start with what I think you mean by journalism. Has it changed? Of course it has. It could not fail to respond to social media. And unfortunately, we've seen two things at once. We've seen the fractionalization of the old guard, what people here wrongly refer to as the mainstream media, but also the gathering up in ownership into just a few hands of all the media, or almost all the media. There are, of course, independents, and I urge people to seek them out. But there's also a homogenization, a hegemony. That's not good. We need diverse opinions throughout journalism. If something you see on television or your screen makes you angry, good. What's your proper response? Yell no. Get to know more. Go find other sources. Learn which facts they got right and which ones they may have twisted just a little bit, because this is happening. And this is nothing new. It's just we're in another wave of technological advance. So of course, some people are going to rush in quickly and do what they can, but it's absolutely nothing new. I urge people not to distrust, but to also trust with a healthy dose of skepticism. Things that are presented to you may be a bit of propaganda. So what do? Again, do you get angry? Do you cut out? Do you run to the hills? No, of course not. This is nothing new. What you do is you read what you can. You have to be a better, smarter consumer of information. Don't just take, and I'll pick on TikTok because, nothing I say is going to stop TikTok. But I'll pick on TikTok. All right. First off, don't get all your news from TikTok. It's much too short of a venue. The presentations are much too short in time. If you see something that's interesting on there, look it up. Find how many sources, because even the best of intentions, it may have some details that they left out. You want to find the stuff out. Be a better consumer is what I'm saying here, as far as the world and news and feeling like you're part of it all, because you should. You should take an active role in your world. Be a better consumer.
Absolutely, be a better consumer. Uh, the space given out by mainstream journalism, a lot of people were looking at the social media or the internet for answers to that, and initially it looked like that it will be, but then the wider social media took over, and then there was all this talk about fake news, and lots of news which has been manufactured. And now the new thing is about artificial intelligence even finding its way into newsrooms. So
Yeah.
amidst all things, how do you see this whole process of writing? You talk about moral resonance in your books, in your stories. How do you see as an individual, or I can see as an individual, as a simple consumer of information or news, how should I see this whole? It's almost a dilemma for me, because then social media or the wider internet is also not helping me. What do I do in these times? Then should I look at books? Should I look at places like Substack, Medium? But then also there also it will be difficult to to sift through all the different various ways people can put
Don't,
propaganda.
don't, don't set your mind to, I must take on everything and solve it, because that way lies madness. You will not take on all of the internet. There's simply too much of it. Even just in the United States, there's tens of thousands of podcasts. And great, there's a podcast for everybody. Actually, there's probably a few podcasts for everybody. Pick the sources that you agree with, and also pick a few that you disagree with, so that you can monitor, quote unquote, the other side. And by the way, there's no other side. I'm speaking as an American here. We have been we have been actively divided by people and politicians, wealthy people. I think what we have to do is remind ourselves that we are Americans. We're here to disagree in one house and keep that house united. It's okay to passionately disagree. It is not okay to feel like you must resort to something worse, some violence. No violence, please. If you feel yourself getting angry from social media, that's the time to disengage. Not forever, but there are other sources. You mentioned books. I happen to write some books. Books are a moment in time collected. They can tell you greater, deeper truths than the daily news, because the daily news has had no time to put it into perspective. They try, they do good work for the most part, but they've had no time to put it into real historical perspective. How does it really digest and fit into the overall scheme of the changing generations? Books do that. Read books. If you want to know what happened today, watch the news. If you want to know why it matters, read books, and mix it up. I happen to write fiction books. Read those. Get all of them. But also, and I tell this, I'm a tutor on the side, and I tell this to my students: mix it up. Uh, do things that are new, things that are classic, and biographies and histories. Mix in some biographies and histories, whatever catches your interest, or maybe just pick it up and say, hey, I know nothing about this. I'd better read a book. That's where you start to get the perspective. And to give you an example, I think we're talking, our conversation is freewheeling, but I think we're talking about the modern trends in mind control. Can
Absolutely.
AI, you know, really shape everything? This ever and always, this has been the way it is. I'm working currently on a book, almost finished. It'll be out next year. And it's on Alexander the Great. The reason I wanted to do this is because of parts that I started to read in his history. Yes, we know he went, he battled, never lost a battle. He was a great commander and also a horrible human being, by the way. But he was perhaps the inventor of PR. If you look at his, the surviving mosaics and coins and some of the other depictions of his physical features, they don't agree. And I'm going with the historians who say it's because He changed his appearance to be more heroic looking. He dyed his hair. This is a guy from what we now know as Greece. He should have had dark curly hair, but he had flowing reddish blonde hair. What? What? Where did that come from? It came from a bottle. Some historians say, I wasn't there. I never met the man. My point is, he wanted to be heroic, and he also had a tendency to, write his own tales and make sure those were the ones that got out. This is 2,300 years ago, and we're still seeing the same thing. The people who got the money want to put out the story they want put out. And they've got AI now. Oh, I am concerned about AI. I really am. I think it's just a bad idea. But the genie's out of the bottle already. We've only had it for a year, and already it's in everything. Given time and given the desire for profit, I see no end to it. Again, what do? Do you take on the whole world, try to wrap your head around it, and you'll go crazy? Don't do that. Live your life, engage face to face with real human beings in your life. Hug the people you love. Go out and talk to somebody. Go out and don't call services to have all your stuff delivered to the front doorstep. Go out. Meet the people. Talk about things that matter. Shoot the breeze. Do what people do. This is what AI cannot replace. As long as we hold on to it, if we let go of this, if we do this for the rest of our lives, or one day it's going to be in your head because Musk is working on that. It's going to be in your head. What do we do this? We sit here with contemplate our navels. I have another short story that I've never written because it doesn't make sense. And the reason it doesn't make sense is this. Okay, it's a future time when people have decided that they're going to put themselves into a computer. They're going to live their lives because in the computer, like in the Matrix, you can live a better life. You can have steak every night. You can drive around in big cars. You can own gigantic buildings and homes. It's all in the computer. It's all possible. It's all everything a monkey-brained human would want. In my story, and the reason I can't write it is it would be a flash fiction. And they lived 0.0003 seconds before they became so bored they killed themselves in the computer. That's where we might be heading. I don't think so. I hope not. But give these things a rest. Put them down. Go out. Meet people. Remember, if the big boys are thinking big, think small. You can live a life quietly, happily. I mean, there are other things to do. Don't vote for megalomaniacs. They're pretty easy to spot. They're pretty darn easy to spot who wants to be a dictator. Gee, who just mentioned wanting to be a dictator for just a couple of days? I wonder. You got to stop these people. And I mean through voting, never violence, but you got to stop these people. We have to tax them back into normal wealth levels. We have to tell them to shut up because they are idiots. I mean, straight up, they are not smart people. They're overindulged. They've never exercised their brains. We need to stop them peacefully. We need to act now. But again, these are not big, do it all, grab a torch and storm the castle. This is vote. This is get out and talk to other people, discuss it face to face, do the thing that AI can't do, that social media can't do, and that is be a human being. In this book, Goody Celeste, the phrasing I'm using is human magic. She is she is a young, beautiful witch. She's a Wiccan, and the people around her believe she's practicing witchcraft, but the reader will recognize that there's a good chance she's just a smart woman who's using a little psychology. But what she's really doing is using empathy. Empathy. And I call it human magic because I needed to call it something. Uh, Empathy. If you take, and now we're getting onto grandiose subjects, but so
It's
we are.
fine.
There are only two forces in all the world, and they both exist here inside the human breast or spirit or mind. They do not come from heaven or hell. They do not come from grand places. They are not magical. There are only two forces, and those two forces are selfishness and empathy. We know the selfish people. Look, when you climb in a rocket shaped like a you know what, and the only purpose of that thing is to sell tickets so that very rich people can distract themselves from their awful lives, that's an example of selfishness. I mean, if we're talking, I don't know, if we're talking celebrities, I would much rather meet Dolly Parton than Elon Musk, okay? Dolly is is always into charities and she's got literacy programs and everything else. This is a woman who's got money and fame, but she doesn't build rockets. And look, I love science fiction. I want us to go to the stars, but not as tourists. Let us go as explorers. There might even be money out there. There are rocks to dig up. Human beings, you know, human beings like to dig things out of the ground and sell them to each other. You know that. So there's rocks in space. There's also water in space and real estate if we can ever figure out what we're going to do with it. Um, I think we will have colonies on other planets. I won't say in my lifetime, but the beginnings of it will happen. How are we going to get there? Are we going to get there with selfishness? I don't think so. I mean, it tends to be at the front, whether I like it or not. I think, you know, people's worst instincts, the monkey brain that we have, is get, want. We really are, we're kidding ourselves if we think we're evolved. But okay, so the first of us might be the greedy ones, the selfish ones, but we better be ready to go out there for a better, nobler purpose. If it's just to go get the rocks and bring them back and sell them to each other, that doesn't seem like something that's worth doing. So I encourage people, it goes along with what I said earlier. Do the things that AI cannot do. AI does not have empathy. It can't. It can't. And all right, this is another one of my standard rants. My poor students rants. My poor students hear this all the time. AI does not exist. There is no such animal. Artificial intelligence. No, because intelligence speaks of self-reflection. They don't have that. These are machines, these are algorithms. If you got an A in math class, you can figure these things out pretty easily. And they only have a set number of reactions, maybe some variables, but they don't have empathy. They don't set a course of action because they have a vision. There's no such thing. AI does not exist. It is an algorithm. I've seen it. I mean, we all have seen it for years. We've all been fooled by something that came on or some phone call that started up and sounded like a human being. We've all been fooled by this, but that's not AI. It's not thinking. What it will do is follow the instructions of a few very rich, very selfish people, and it will get into everything and steal your data and inundate you with ads you do not want, you know, manipulate your your ability to earn financial security. It's a mess. And honestly, I think it should be stopped, but I don't think it can. So we're going to have to learn to do what humans can do, which is kind of throw a spanner in the works. We can do that just by being humans. We have. I'm getting onto another subject. Young folks, guy with gray hair saying, young folks have this fantastic ability to say, I don't want that. I don't like that. I pray that the upcoming generations look at us in our big, big houses, driving for hours and hours on the roads every day to get wherever so we can shop. Look, I just bought something somebody dug out of the ground. I bought a rock or a fancy this or a name that or a food that's terrible for you. I hope that the upcoming generations look at that and say, yuck, I want good food. I want plenty of time with the people I care about. I want security, sure, and all the basics. Certainly I want to live indoors. But I don't want bills coming out my ears because I've got a huge house and I have to keep my car can't ever get to be more than 2 years old, or I have to wear a silk suit that costs as much as that guy earns in 2 months. I want them to say, yuck, you screwed up, last generation. I could never be happier than if they did that. I'll take a breath. Am I even staying anywhere close to a subject here?
No, no, I was listening, and it is all about, you also like you have dealt with about humanity, about empathy, about even about the way the world is moving, and that's what a journalist does. That's what an author
Mhm.
does. A lot of the new breed of new age authors will certainly want to write things which are much more authentic, because that's what you leave of today for tomorrow. So I will come to that. But even your books, you have touched great subjects. Come the eventide, about a dolphin. After the fail of civilization. That's a wonderful topic. I love it. I love that
The
topic.
dolphin, the dolphins will save us. That's my hope. Come the Eventide is set 100 years after The Fall. I had one reviewer say, well, he never says what the fall is. Okay, fine. I will spell it out for you in case you can't figure it out. The fall is what's happening to us right now. When does the fall begin? The second you begin reading this book. The fall is the bits and pieces of our society failing. And it will include war and sickness and starvation and crop losses and climate change and everything we're facing, and maybe things we haven't seen yet. I predict, and this is because I write books. It's not because I'm psychic, and it's not because I believe I can write you a chronology, but I think it will take about 30 years to really, really feel it. This is set 100 years later. Somewhere during this process, the dolphins have not gained intelligence. They have that. They honestly do have that. But they've gained an ability to communicate with the humans. And the humans have got themselves in such a mess. Most of us are gone. We checked out, we're gone. But a few live on an island, and the dolphins are trying to stop the salvers, who are basically pirates, from coming to the island and destroying the last of the human beings, because they recognize we need to stop fighting over limited resources. We need to stop fighting each other. Come the Eventide, I was going to write just a quickie short story, and then the characters in it said, you got to write a book. You got to write the darn book. And it took me a year and a half to get through this first novel, which I loved. Once I knew that I was going to reach the end, I just loved it. But it became everything that I am concerned with. It is about climate change. It is about the pollution in the oceans. This is selfishness. This mess is the physical demonstration of human selfishness. The book, and again, spoiler, but I still think it's worth reading. Spoiler is the only thing they can come up with is small changes. There's no big fix. And forgive me if I'm being offensive, but
No,
there's not going to be one magic technological box that fixes it all. Oh, we have carbon scrubbers now. Yeah, we already did. They're called trees. But you're going to build a box that runs on electricity, which is produced at present through carbon emission generators. You're going to build that box to capture the carbon. Oh, that makes so much sense. There will be no technological one fix. And I apologize to anyone who's offended, but kind of no, I don't. Jesus is not going to save us. Beyond the fact that it ain't happening, beyond that fact, think about it for a second. If you believed that God created the earth for us to do with as we will, and we mess it up the way we have, is the Father's best response to just say, okay, I'll clean it up for you, and now don't mess it up again? That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Whatever religious belief you have, I'm sorry. The miracle is not, it's all cleaned and you had to do no effort. The miracle is we, with empathy, start caring about what we do. We stop. Well, I'm committing a sin right now. I'm pointing at the plastic bottle. Coca-Cola, probably not the healthiest thing. I love Coke. Coke, you're wonderful. You own me. But the plastic bottles, can we lose those, please? The one use, the one off, plastic everything. Please, can we stop that? Can young people go to their parents and say, Mom, I love having water, but I can't help but notice that all these plastic bottles are getting into the same water we're trying to drink. Can we please stop using plastic bottles? Can we get reusable things? Can we get a few uses out of things? Small responses. That's it's a message book. It's a message book. Sorry. The message is, yes, you can change things in small ways. And if 8 billion of us all did one small thing each day, what a wonderful world we really could have. I keep coming back to these things. Zebulon Angel in the Shadow Army.
right.
He's any man who's given the temptation of success. And of course, he screws it up. Zebulon Angel is the name of the main character, and he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. And his wife is working on a sex candy. It's kind of a super Viagra that also halfway works as a love potion. And it's fantastic. Everybody wants it. So he gets caught up in international intrigue, this chase for this multi-billion-dollar gummy bear.
Right.
But of course, it goes to his head, and he messes up. They send him to China to do some connecting, and he just messes it up. And strangely enough, he winds up in the tomb of China's first emperor, which turns out to be haunted by Emperor Qin. And there are parallels. A man of our time versus a man who had literally everything. Qin is another fascinating character. All the emperors are. Fascinating guy. I don't think I'd want to have dinner with him. I think it would scare the hell out of me. He pacified the 7 kingdoms, meaning chop chop. You get in my way, I'm just going to kill you. The death toll for these guys is just phenomenal. I mentioned Alexander earlier. Hundreds of thousands dead. Qin, at least tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, just dead. But he had everything, and there's no evidence that he was ever happy. There's never evidence that these guys are truly content. And that's another kind of point I try to get to. When you only ever live for more,
Right.
what do you got? What do you have? What, you know, when I first got this toy, of course I loved it and I played with it. And now I curse it because I keep getting spam calls.
Absolutely.
Nothing, no physical thing is going to distract you for your whole life. You can't. You
Absolutely.
can't live that way. Empathy. Empathy is the better part of us. Now, I don't believe we're ever going to get rid of the selfishness. And I also, I'll throw this out there. I don't think there's a perfect government. I don't think there's a particularly bad one of the ones we've designed. It all comes down to how far the leaders go away from empathy. Um, I often talk against capitalism because I really think it's selfishness with an excuse. Oh, Jesus told me I should own a skyscraper made of solid gold. No, no. All right, so does that make me a socialist or a communist? If I am, I'm a really half-hearted one because any of those systems on paper look great. And I tell my students, let me finish. Communism, great. Socialism, great. Until you put people into it.
Right.
Because, of course, we go back to selfishness. And they seem to have a faster track towards totalitarianism, dictatorship. But now capitalism does too. There's no freedom from that because it's here. It's not coming at us from outside the world. It's human. It's the other half of human magic, the
Right.
human horror.
Right.
So it's
Right.
kind of obvious, but maybe people don't think about it enough. Cultivate your empathy. Work it like a muscle. You can do wonderful things if you will. Let's see. Oh, this is a fun one too. This is Skinner's is about shapeshifters, people who like werewolves, but people who can change their form to mimic us. And they're an ancient race, and they infiltrate a, the set of a Gothic TV show being shot here in Atlanta. And their purpose is to take over the world, but they want to do it because they're afraid the world is spiraling into this selfish black hole, and they think they can do it better. So our hero is like, okay, I got to stop the monsters, except the monsters are kind of right about this. So it's another fun book. Um, Boiling it all down, there's selfishness and there's empathy. We're not going to get rid of them. They're both inside of us. They're not outside forces. They're not God and angels. Whatever religion you ascribe to, it, it's here. You're projecting. The
Absolutely.
only two things you need to worry about, selfishness and empathy. Please practice the empathy. And I'll
Right.
wrap it up there, I think.
Right, Chris. So, for the new generation of writers who want to write the right sort of stuff so that people find joy in it, find reality in it, find truthfulness in it, what are the few things you would advise them to keep in mind in terms of their process, in terms of the way they should go about it? You see, it's almost ironical for a journalist who has been with CNN, who brought war to the living rooms in its own way, the same guy saying, go out and watch the world in the real way, and then
Absolutely.
you will find the reality.
Absolutely.
And that is so, but that was a different time. Today is a different time, and those pictures on television are different, but when you see the horrors of war in the real raw images, you don't find it glamorous. You find it abhorring. You want to escape from that. So help us
There's no
understand
glamour.
about
There's
the
no
present.
glamour in war at all. There's no
Right.
glamour at all in war. Um,
Absolutely. So the present generation of writers, the right kind of writers who want to live, not only great writing for the present and the future, but also great, uh, great example for the present as well as the future.
okay, I think what I would say to any writer is don't get hung up. Now, I'm talking about fiction. If you're doing nonfiction, if you're a journalist, tell your truth. But if you're doing fiction, tell your truth. There are only a short list. There's only a short list of plots. Don't get hung up on the plot. Um, there's the quest, there's the monster, there's the transformation. There are four others. Google it. Point is, there aren't that many plots. So what makes your story worth telling? What makes it unique? Same thing that AI cannot do, at least not yet. Tell the small details. Drill down to the moments. You still have to be picky about it. Maybe what you had for breakfast isn't interesting, but who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe your characters do something over the breakfast table that's really interesting. I don't know. But the details are yours. And getting back to Goody Celeste, this is my youth. I mean, it's in fiction form, and I apologize to anybody who I borrowed from their lives, but this is my youth, and it's full of little details. My favorite is the one that bugs people. I'm from New England, I'm from Rhode Island, so I put vinegar on my French fries. So I put that in there. Every time I do that, I'll go out to a diner, I'll ask for the vinegar, and for what? What are you going to do with that? Okay, it's a small detail. Look for them. Somebody once said that anybody who's ever been 9 years old can write a novel. Remember, think. If you want to, okay, maybe you want to talk about bigger subjects. War, you mentioned. Well, where do wars come from? They don't just start. Hitler didn't just start. He came from a place in a time with values that frankly were off. And he spoke to a people who were ready to listen. Don't forget that. They were ready for this guy. That's where wars come from. So look for the small details in that story. If you want to be the peacemaker, remind people the wonderful things that happen on a daily basis when you actually go out and communicate with somebody. And do that. Again, get off your phone. I don't know what the newest game is, but whatever's on there, people are just, whether it's TikTok or a game or something else, get off the damn phone. Put it down. Turn it off.
Right. Right.
And
There is
tell your
much,
truth.
absolutely. There is much to learn about life, about books, about stories, about writing. And for that, a lot of people would like to learn more from you, more about you, Chris. So, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
With me, read my books. I've got a website, if that's what you mean, but read my books. I'll mention it, chrisrikerauthor.com. There are free short stories. Not sure you want to lay out a whole $10 for a book? Come on. Fine. Read some of the short stories. And you'll see my values. Now, I'm not preaching. I'm not saying you must think like me. I don't want that. I don't care if I do win the lottery tonight. I don't want to be in charge of that much thought control. It's scary. It's scary. I don't want to be a pharaoh. I think there are people who believe they are. I really think that the ultra rich have forgotten to stay behind the scenes. They're out there. Praise me. You must praise me at all times. You must be amazed by me. I don't want that. I just want to tell my truth, and I'd love it if people would read. Read my books.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Read the books. With this, It's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you, Ajay.